Picture this: a bronze titan standing over 100 feet tall, its gleaming form catching the Mediterranean sun as ships sailed between its legs. The Colossus of Rhodes wasn't just a statue, it was a statement, a testament to human ingenuity and the unyielding spirit of an ancient city that refused to be forgotten. For 56 years, it dominated the skyline, a guardian and a symbol of resilience. But when it fell, it didn't vanish into myth. Instead, it left behind whispers of hidden chambers, lost treasures, and secrets buried beneath centuries of dust and legend. What if this wonder of the ancient world was more than just a marvel of engineering? What if it was a vault, a time capsule, or even a beacon meant to convey messages we've yet to decipher? For over 2,000 years, the Colossus has haunted our imagination. Historians debate its true appearance, engineers marvel at the techniques used to build it, and treasure hunters dream of what might have been concealed inside. Some say it held offerings to the gods, others believe it housed mechanisms far ahead of their time. And then there are the darker tales of curses, of warnings left by its creators, of a purpose so profound it was deliberately erased from history. The truth is, every generation has peered into the shadows of this fallen giant and seen something different, but one thing remains constant: the Colossus refuses to give up its secrets easily. So today, we're not just retelling an old story, we're embarking on a quest, a journey through crumbling texts, cryptic clues, and the latest archaeological discoveries that might finally shine a light on what the Colossus was truly meant to be. From the fiery origins of its construction to the eerie silence that followed its collapse, we'll piece together the puzzle that has baffled scholars for millennia. Because this isn't just about a statue, it's about the people who built it, the world they lived in, and the legacy they hoped to leave behind. And who knows? By the end, you might just see the Colossus of Rhodes in a way you never have before. To grasp why the Colossus of Rhodes still captivates us today, we have to step back into the world that birthed it. Picture Rhodes in the 3rd century before the Common Era, a bustling island at the crossroads of trade routes, its people fresh from a hard-won victory. When the ruler of Cyprus, Demetrius the Besieger, launched an attack with 40,000 troops and towering siege engines, Rhodes stood firm. After a grueling year-long blockade, Demetrius retreated, abandoning his war machines on the shores. And here's where the story takes a turn. The Rhodians didn't just celebrate. They melted down the bronze from those very machines to forge something extraordinary, a godlike figure of their patron deity, Helios, not just as a trophy, but as a declaration. This wasn't just a statue, it was a feat of engineering that pushed the limits of ancient technology. Imagine workers assembling bronze plates, each painstakingly hammered into shape, over a skeletal frame of iron and stone. For 12 years, the city's artisans labored, constructing the Colossus in sections, likely using earthen ramps to reach its towering height. And when it was done, the result was awe-inspiring. Ships entering the harbor would have passed beneath its legs, gazing up at a figure rumored to hold a torch aloft, its flame visible for miles. But here's the twist: despite popular depictions, historians now doubt it actually straddled the harbor. Ancient accounts suggest it stood nearby, 1 foot on either side of a lesser inlet, its posture more grounded than the myth suggests. Yet its grandeur couldn't defy nature. In 2256, a devastating earthquake shattered Rhodes, toppling the Colossus at the knees. For centuries, its broken remains lay where they fell, becoming a tourist attraction in their own right. Pliny the Elder wrote that even in ruin, few could wrap their arms around its thumb. But the most intriguing detail, the Rhodians chose not to rebuild. An oracle's warning, some claimed, though pragmatism likely played a role. Instead, the fragments sat for nearly 900 years until Arab invaders finally carted them away, selling the bronze to a merchant who needed 900 camels to haul it all. So why does this matter? Because every layer of the Colossus's story, from its wartime origins to its deliberate abandonment, hints at deeper truths. The materials, the construction, even the decision to leave it in ruins. Each choice whispers of cultural values, technological pride, and perhaps secrets woven into its very design. To understand what might have been hidden within, we first had to understand the hands that built it and the world they were determined to immortalize. The construction of the Colossus of Rhodes wasn't just ambitious, it was borderline revolutionary. Imagine a world without cranes, without steel beams, without computer models to test structural integrity. Yet here stood a bronze giant towering over the island like a sentinel. So how did they do it? The answer lies in a blend of ancient ingenuity and sheer determination. Workers likely began with a sturdy stone base, anchoring the statue's iron framework deep into the ground. From there, they would have built earthen ramps spiraling upward, allowing artisans to assemble the Colossus piece by piece. Think of it like stacking the world's most precarious puzzle, where each bronze plate, some as thick as a human hand, had to fit perfectly over the skeleton beneath. But here's where it gets even more fascinating. Unlike solid statues of the time, the Colossus was hollow. Ancient accounts describe an interior filled with crossbeams and supports, a web of iron and stone holding the structure together. This wasn't just a design choice, it was a necessity. A solid bronze statue of that size would have collapsed under its own weight. Yet this hollow core raises a tantalizing possibility. What if those empty spaces weren't just structural? Could there have been chambers inside, hidden passages, or even platforms for workers to maintain the statue? Some historians suggest the interior might have housed religious offerings, votive gifts to Helios, tucked away like treasures in a divine vault. Others speculate about mechanical wonders, perhaps even a system of counterweights or pulleys that allowed the statue's torch to pivot or glow. Then there's the mystery of its assembly. While most believe the Colossus was cast in sections and hoisted into place, a few daring theories propose an even wilder idea. What if parts of it were cast directly on site, using temporary furnaces built around the framework? Picture workers pouring molten bronze into molds at staggering heights, a process as dangerous as it was groundbreaking. And let's not forget the logistical nightmare of sourcing materials. Rhodes wasn't rich in copper or tin, the key components of bronze. The metal likely came from Demetrius's abandoned siege engines, melted down and repurposed in a symbolic act of defiance. Every step of its construction was a statement, a blend of artistry, engineering, and political theater. So why does this matter today? Because the Colossus wasn't just a statue. It was a mirror reflecting the technological and cultural ambitions of its time. The methods used to build it, the ramps, the hollow design, the repurposed materials, speak to a society pushing the boundaries of what was possible. And if there were hidden spaces inside, that opens a door to even bigger questions. Were they meant to be discovered, or were they sealed away, carrying secrets meant to outlast the statue itself? The Colossus may be gone, but the puzzle of its construction still beckons, daring us to unravel one of antiquity's greatest engineering marvels. The idea that the Colossus of Rhodes hid secret chambers inside its bronze shell isn't just modern speculation, it's rooted in ancient practices. Across the Mediterranean, hollow statues were far from unusual. The Greeks and Romans often designed them with interior spaces, sometimes to store offerings, other times to conceal mechanisms that brought their deities to life. Take the legendary statue of Zeus at Olympia, for example. Historical records describe hollow compartments in its throne, possibly holding precious votive gifts or even mechanical devices that created illusions of movement. So if other colossal statues had hidden spaces, why wouldn't the Colossus? But let's dig deeper. The Colossus's construction, its iron framework and layered bronze plates would have naturally created voids within its structure. Some historians argue these weren't just empty gaps but intentional chambers. Imagine a narrow staircase spiraling up through the statue's leg, leading to a small room in the torso where priests might have placed sacred objects. Or consider the possibility of a hidden compartment near the base, accessible only to those who knew the secret. After all, this was a statue built to celebrate victory and honor the gods. What better way to consecrate it than by sealing treasures inside, like a time capsule for the divine? Then there's the tantalizing account from the Arab chronicler al-Maqdisi, who claimed the statue's fragments contained mysterious cavities when they were finally dismantled centuries later. Could these have been the remnants of sealed chambers? Skeptics argue that any hollow spaces were purely structural, necessary to reduce weight and stabilize the towering figure. But here's the counterpoint. If the Rhodians went to such lengths to build a hollow statue, why not use that space meaningfully? Temples of the era often hid relics in their walls or floors. The Colossus, as a symbol of both divine and human triumph, would have been the perfect vessel for something more than air. And that raises the most provocative question of all. If there were hidden chambers, what became of their contents? When the earthquake toppled the Colossus, did the impact scatter or bury whatever might have been inside? Or were the artifacts quietly retrieved before the statue's final destruction? The answer might lie beneath modern Rhodes, where fragments of the ancient harbor still wait to be explored. Until then, the chambers remain a ghostly possibility, one that turns the Colossus from a marvel of metal into a vault of unanswered riddles. To understand the Colossus of Rhodes, you have to start with Helios, the radiant sun god, who wasn't just a figure of worship but the very soul of the island. Rhodes claimed him as its divine patron, a celestial guardian whose chariot dragging the sun across the sky mirrored the island's dominance over the Aegean's trade routes. The Colossus wasn't merely a tribute, it was a bridge between the earthly and the divine, a towering symbol of gratitude to the god who, according to legend, willed Rhodes into existence when Zeus forgot to allot him land. But what if there was more to this connection than meets the eye? Ancient texts describe Helios as more than just a sun deity. He was a god of insight, of hidden knowledge, his all-seeing gaze piercing through deception. This wasn't just poetic flair. Temples dedicated to Helios often incorporated alignments with solstices or equinoxes, their architecture designed to catch the sun's rays at precise moments, turning stone and metal into celestial calendars. Could the Colossus have served a similar purpose? Some researchers point to its rumored harbor stance, suggesting its outstretched arm or torch might have cast shadows that marked seasonal changes, turning the statue into a giant sundial for the city. Others propose even grander theories, that its hollow interior acted as a resonating chamber during rituals, amplifying chants or prayers meant to reach the heavens. Imagine priests climbing hidden staircases to stand within the statue's chest, their voices echoing through bronze as sunlight streamed through gaps in the metal, creating a spectacle of light and sound. Then there's the mystery of its materials. Bronze, an alloy sacred to Helios, was believed to capture and reflect divine energy. The Rhodians didn't just use bronze because it was practical, they chose it because it shimmered like the sun itself, a deliberate nod to Helios's radiance. Even the statue's posture might have held meaning. While most depictions show the Colossus standing rigid, A few fragmented accounts describe it leaning slightly forward, as if straining toward the horizon. Was this artistic license or a coded reference to the sun's perpetual motion? The most tantalizing clue, though, lies in what didn't survive. When the Colossus fell, its head, often the repository of a statue's spiritual essence, vanished without a trace. Later chroniclers wrote of its features being so lifelike, some swore they saw the god's eyes flicker in the twilight. Could those eyes have held something? Gemstones, perhaps, or even polished mirrors designed to catch and redirect sunlight during ceremonies. Without the head, we're left grasping at shadows. But one thing is certain, the Colossus wasn't just a monument. It was a conversation with the divine, a language of metal and myth meant to be read not just by mortals but by the god it honored. And somewhere in that lost dialogue, the statue's deepest secrets may still be waiting. When the earthquake struck Rhodes in 226 before the Common Era, it didn't just topple a statue, it buried a mystery. The Colossus lay broken for nearly 9 centuries, its fragments sprawled across the ground like pieces of a forgotten puzzle. But here's what's curious, no one tried to rebuild it. An oracle's warning, historians claim, forbade the Rhodians from restoring their fallen giant. Superstition, perhaps, but what if there was more to that warning than met the eye? Imagine the scene workers hesitating to clear the rubble, whispers spreading through the city that disturbing the wreckage might unleash something better left buried. Beneath those shattered bronze plates and twisted iron beams, legends hint at something deliberate. Ancient engineers were masters of symbolism, and the Colossus's hollow structure raises a provocative question. Did its creators design it to collapse in a specific way? Some theorists suggest the statue's posture, leaning slightly forward, might have been intentional, ensuring that when it fell, certain chambers or compartments would remain protected, sealed beneath layers of metal and stone. Think of it like a safe dropped from a height, designed to land precisely so its contents stayed intact. Then there's the matter of what those contents could have been. Offerings to Helios are the obvious guess, but consider the era. Rhodes was a crossroads of cultures, a hub where Egyptian, Greek, and Persian knowledge intertwined. What if the Colossus held something far more valuable than gold? A collection of scrolls, for instance, detailing trade routes, astronomical observations, or even early engineering secrets. The Library of Alexandria wouldn't burn for another century. Could the Rhodians have hidden their own trove of knowledge inside their godlike guardian? Modern archaeologists face a frustrating challenge. The exact location of the fallen Colossus remains uncertain, its fragments long scattered or melted down. But recent ground-penetrating radar surveys near Rhodes's ancient harbor have detected anomalies, unexplained voids beneath layers of sediment. Could these be the remnants of hidden chambers, crushed but still preserving their secrets? Until someone digs deeper, we're left with tantalizing clues and a lingering sense that the Colossus's true purpose didn't end when it hit the ground. If anything, its silence only amplified the whispers, and that's the heart of the mystery. The oracle's warning might not have been about angering the gods at all. Maybe it was a plea to protect something meant to stay hidden until the right moment. After all, the greatest secrets aren't always lost. Sometimes they're waiting. The fate of the Colossus's bronze after its collapse reads like a detective story with missing evidence. Ancient accounts tell us Arab invaders under Caliph Muawiyah I finally dismantled the ruins in the 7th century, loading the metal onto 900 camels bound for Syria. But here's the twist: 900 camel load sounds like a lot until you do the math. Estimates suggest the Colossus weighed over 70 tons, meaning each camel would have carried less than 200 pounds. That discrepancy raises eyebrows. Could some of the bronze have vanished before the Arabs ever arrived? There's a tantalizing clue in medieval records. A Byzantine chronicle mentions bronze of unusual quality being used to reforge church bells in Constantinople centuries after the Colossus fell. The description matches Rhodian bronze, known for its distinctive alloy, richer in tin than ordinary mixtures. Even more intriguing, one of these bells was said to bear a faint inscription, though no one could decipher it before it was melted down during a siege. Was this a fragment of the Colossus, its surface still etched with symbols from its creators? Then there's the mystery of Rhodes itself. Local folklore speaks of sun metal hidden in the walls of old houses, passed down through generations. In the 1980s, a restoration project in the old town uncovered bronze sheets embedded in a medieval building's foundation, sheets too large for ordinary construction. Tests revealed traces of the same tin-rich alloy used in the Colossus. Had Rhodians secretly salvaged pieces of their fallen guardian, repurposing them as silent tributes in everyday structures? The most compelling theory, though, comes from an unlikely place: shipwrecks. Divers exploring a 4th century wreck off the coast of Cyprus found a bronze ingot stamped with a sun symbol, a mark associated with Rhodes. The ingot's composition was a near-perfect match for the Colossus's known alloy. Could this have been part of the original shipment to Syria, lost at sea before reaching its destination? If so, it suggests the statue's metal was scattered far earlier than history records, some fragments slipping through the cracks of time. Tracking these scattered clues feels like piecing together a shattered mirror. Each fragment reflects a different possibility, whether hidden inscriptions, ceremonial reuse, or even deliberate preservation by those who refused to let their legacy be entirely erased. The Colossus may be gone, but its bronze still whispers to us if we know where to listen. The notion that the Colossus of Rhodes might have doubled as a lighthouse isn't as far-fetched as it first sounds. Picture this: a towering bronze figure, its hollow core flickering with firelight, casting a glow across the harbor entrance. While the famous pharaohs of Alexandria gets all the credit as the ancient world's premier lighthouse, Rhodes was a maritime powerhouse, and its people were no strangers to blending form with function. But here's the catch: ancient accounts never explicitly mention the Colossus guiding ships. So where does this theory come from? It starts with the statue's design. That hollow interior we've been dissecting, it wouldn't have just been empty space. Historians point to the Colossus's rumored torch, often depicted in modern reconstructions, as a potential light source. Imagine a system of mirrors or polished bronze plates inside the statue's torso, reflecting and amplifying a central flame to create a beacon visible for miles. The mechanics wouldn't have been impossible for the time. The Greeks were already experimenting with reflective surfaces. Archimedes, just a few decades later, would allegedly use bronze shields to focus sunlight and set enemy ships ablaze. If they could harness light for war, why not for navigation? Then there's the location debate. While the idea of the Colossus straddling the harbor is largely myth, its placement near the water remains plausible. A statue positioned even slightly inland could have served as a daytime landmark, its polished surface catching the sun, while a nighttime flame transformed it into a guiding light. Compare this to the pharaohs, which used a massive open flame atop its tower. The Colossus, with its enclosed design, might have offered a subtler but equally effective solution, especially if the flame was shielded from wind by its bronze shell, burning steadier than an exposed fire. But skeptics raise valid counterpoints. No surviving texts from Rhodes mention maintaining a flame in the statue, and the logistics of fueling a perpetual fire inside a metal structure would have been daunting. Bronze conducts heat. The interior could have become dangerously hot, risking damage to the statue's own framework. Plus, wouldn't such a practical feature have been recorded? Unless, of course, the light wasn't constant. Some theorists propose the flame was lit only during festivals or emergencies, turning the Colossus into a situational beacon rather than a full-time lighthouse. The most compelling argument, though, lies in symbolism. Rhodes's wealth came from the sea, and Helios was the god of light. A statue that literally illuminated the waters would have been the ultimate tribute, a fusion of divine honor and civic utility. Whether or not it ever truly guided ships, the image endures, a giant standing sentinel, its fire cutting through the Mediterranean darkness, as much a protector as a wonder. And that duality between myth and machine might be the Colossus's most enduring secret of all. Ancient artists and writers didn't just depict the Colossus of Rhodes, they reimagined it, embedding their own era's fears, hopes, and secrets into its towering form. Take the earliest surviving descriptions, like those by Pliny the Elder, who never saw the statue intact yet described it with awe, noting how its fingers alone dwarfed most statues. But it's the later, more fanciful portrayals that raise eyebrows. Medieval manuscripts show the Colossus straddling the harbor with ships passing beneath, a detail absent from ancient accounts. Was this artistic license, or did these artists have access to lost sources? One illuminated manuscript from the 12th century even shows the statue clutching a glowing orb in its outstretched hand, an object never mentioned in historical records. Could this be a misinterpretation of its torch, or a hint at something more symbolic, like a representation of the sun, tying back to Helios's celestial role? Then there's the curious case of Renaissance engravings. A 16th century print by Italian artist Martino Rota depicts the Colossus with intricate armor like plating, its surface covered in what appear to be inscriptions. No ancient text describes such detailing, yet the precision in the engraving suggests Rota might have drawn from now lost sketches or travelers' accounts. Even stranger, some of these inscriptions resemble symbols found on Rhodian coins, a possible clue that artists were piecing together fragmented knowledge about the statue's appearance. The armor detail is particularly intriguing. If the Colossus did have textured plating, it could explain how its hollow structure maintained stability, with overlapping seams acting like the scales of a fish, flexing in coastal winds without cracking. Literature adds another layer to the puzzle. A Byzantine poem from the 9th century describes the fallen Colossus as a giant whose ribs held echoes of the gods, a line historians once dismissed as metaphorical. But recent analysis suggests the word translated as ribs might instead refer to internal beams or chambers. Could this be a garbled memory of the statue's framework, passed down through generations? Even more provocative are Arab travel logs from the 10th century, which claim the statue's ruins emitted a faint metallic hum when the wind struck them, a phenomenon consistent with hollow bronze structures resonating like gigantic instruments. Perhaps the most tantalizing clue comes from an unexpected place: alchemical texts. In a 15th century manuscript, the Colossus is referenced as an example of solar metal, bronze imbued with ritual significance through its exposure to sunlight. The text claims such metal could preserve voices, hinting at a belief that the statue's alloy might have been engineered to capture or amplify sound. Far-fetched maybe, but consider this: Rhodian engineers were known for their acoustical innovations, designing theaters where whispers could reach the highest seats. If they applied similar principles to the Colossus, its hollow interior could have functioned as a resonant chamber during ceremonies, turning chants into thunderous proclamations. These artistic and literary fragments form a mosaic of possibilities. None alone can confirm what the Colossus truly held or how it functioned, but together they paint a picture far richer than the static monument of legend. Whether through deliberate coding or accidental preservation, these creative reinterpretations may hold kernels of truth, clues waiting to be decoded by those willing to look beyond the ruins. The iron skeleton inside the Colossus of Rhodes wasn't just a support system, it was a gamble. Picture a towering bronze figure, its skin gleaming in the sun, all held together by an intricate web of iron beams hidden beneath the surface. For the 3rd century before the Common Era, this was engineering on the edge of possibility. Iron was still a relatively new material for large-scale construction, and the Rhodians were pushing it to its limits. But here's the question historians still debate. Did that very innovation become the statue's fatal flaw? Let's break down the science. Iron in the ancient world wasn't the refined steel we know today. It was brittle, prone to impurities, and most critically, vulnerable to rust. Rhodes sits in the heart of the Mediterranean, where salty sea air would have relentlessly attacked those internal supports. Modern metallurgists estimate that even with protective coatings like wax or pitch, the iron framework likely began corroding within decades. Now imagine the stress: 70 tons of bronze plates shifting in coastal winds, their weight pressing down on joints already weakened by oxidation. It's no surprise that when the earthquake hit, the Colossus snapped at the knees literally. The iron, once its greatest strength, may have turned into its Achilles heel. But corrosion isn't the only puzzle. Recent studies of ancient iron reinforcements in Greek temples reveal something fascinating. Many were designed with intentional flexibility, allowing structures to sway slightly during tremors. Could the Colossus's framework have had similar adaptive features? Some engineers point to accounts describing the statue singing in high winds, a phenomenon that suggests hollow chambers and carefully tensioned metal. If true, the iron skeleton might have been more sophisticated than we've given it credit for, engineered not just to hold the statue up, but to let it move. Then there's the wild card: hidden mechanisms. Ancient sources mention colossal statues with inner staircases or even pulley systems for maintenance. The Colossus's hollow design would have made such features possible. Imagine counterweights hidden in the torso, or iron tracks guiding movable components, perhaps even the rumored torch that could pivot or light up. If so, the framework wasn't just a scaffold. It was the hidden machinery of a divine spectacle. The irony: those very innovations could have accelerated its collapse. Complex inner systems mean more stress points, more potential weak spots. When the earthquake struck, any moving parts might have become deadly projectiles, shattering the statue from within. Yet for 56 years, this iron marvel stood tall, a testament to engineers who dared to think bigger, even if the Earth itself had other plans. The skeleton that gave the Colossus life may also have sealed its fate, but in that balance between ambition and fragility lies its true legacy. When the Knights of St. John arrived in Rhodes in the early 14th century, they weren't just stepping onto an island, they were walking into a legend. The Colossus had been gone for over 1,000 years, its bronze scattered or melted, its story fading into myth. But the Knights, a military order famed for their secrecy and reverence for relics, may have stumbled upon more than just rubble. Their own records and local whispers suggest they knew something about the Colossus that history has since forgotten. Digging through the Knights' archives reveals intriguing gaps. While they meticulously documented their fortifications, transforming Rhodes into a medieval stronghold, their notes on ancient ruins are curiously sparse. Except for one cryptic reference in a Grandmaster's ledger from 1348, a payment for the removal of certain pagan metals from the harbor district. The amount listed would have covered far more than clearing debris. Was this a discreet operation to salvage something from the Colossus's remains? Local folklore adds fuel to the fire. Stories passed down in Rhodian fishing villages tell of knights conducting midnight excavations near the old harbor walls, their lanterns flickering over pits dug where the Colossus supposedly fell. Some accounts even describe a sun-struck chamber discovered beneath layers of sediment, its walls lined with strange markings. True or not, these tales align with the knights' known fascination with ancient symbolism. As guardians of holy relics like the Shroud of Edessa, they had a track record of seeking out and concealing objects of power. Then there's the architectural evidence. When the knights rebuilt Rhodes's fortifications, they reused materials from older structures, a common practice. But scholars have noted something unusual. Sections of the city's medieval walls contain bronze reinforcements, an expensive choice when iron would suffice. Spectrographic analysis shows some of this bronze shares a distinct tin ratio with known Rhodian alloys. Could these be fragments of the Colossus deliberately repurposed? The most tantalizing clue, though, lies in Malta. After the knights were driven from Rhodes in 1522, they relocated to Malta, taking their archives and possibly their secrets with them. In the vaults of Valletta's cathedral, a single 15th century manuscript depicts a colossal figure standing over Rhodes, its chest cavity open to reveal a lattice of beams and what appears to be a small, sealed compartment at its core. The illustration lacks context, but the detail is precise enough to suggest the artist had access to first-hand accounts, or something more. Whether the knights found artifacts, documents, or simply rumors, their silence speaks volumes. In an era when ancient knowledge was both prized and perilous, the Colossus's secrets may have been buried once more, not by time but by design. And if that's true, the real mystery isn't just what the statue hid, but why the knights chose to keep it hidden. For centuries, the image of the Colossus straddling Rhodes' harbor entrance has captured imaginations, bronze legs wide enough for ships to pass beneath, its towering form casting shadows over the water. It's a dramatic scene, immortalized in paintings and textbooks alike. But here's the problem: archaeology and ancient texts tell a very different story. Recent excavations and re-examined accounts suggest the Colossus likely stood on a massive pedestal near the harbor, not astride it. This isn't just a detail for historians to quibble over. The statue's true location could rewrite our understanding of its function and what might lie buried beneath its original foundation. Let's start with the evidence. The myth of the harbor-spanning Colossus traces back to the 16th century, when Renaissance artists like Martin van Heemskerk depicted it that way, likely inspired by poetic license rather than historical records. Contrast that with the earliest surviving descriptions, like those from Pliny the Elder, who merely noted its immense size and proximity to the harbor without mentioning ships sailing underneath. Even more telling, the geography itself. Rhodes' main harbor entrance spans roughly 400 feet, far wider than the Colossus's estimated 60-foot stance. Building a statue large enough to bridge that gap would have been beyond even the Rhodians' engineering prowess. So where was it really? A breakthrough came in 2008, when radar surveys near the Mandrake harbor, long rumored as the Colossus's home, revealed the remnants of a massive circular foundation. Its size and shape match descriptions of the pedestal mentioned in fragmented Rhodian texts, which describe the statue standing beside the port atop a base of white marble. This puts the Colossus on solid ground, possibly near the harbor's breakwater, where it would still dominate the skyline without defying physics. But here's where it gets intriguing. If the Colossus wasn't straddling the water, what was its relationship to the harbor? Some scholars propose it functioned as a symbolic gatekeeper, its torch or raised arm serving as a navigational marker, a sort of ancient-day beacon. Others point to the pedestal's design. Unlike simple platforms, Rhodian pedestals often housed chambers or vaults. Could the foundation beneath the Colossus have concealed something? In 2015, core samples taken near the radar anomaly detected hollow spaces beneath the marble fragments, along with traces of metal that don't match the surrounding soil. This raises a tantalizing possibility. The real secret of the Colossus might not have been inside the statue at all, but beneath it. Temples across the ancient world frequently buried offerings or sacred objects in their foundations, a practice meant to consecrate the ground. If the Rhodians followed suit, the pedestal could hold votive gifts, sealed building inscriptions, or even early blueprints of the Colossus itself. Until excavations are allowed to go deeper, we're left with a tantalizing paradox. The Colossus's true stance, rooted firmly on land, might make it less cinematic but far more mysterious, because if its secrets aren't in the harbor's waters, they're waiting underfoot, hidden in the earth that once supported one of antiquity's greatest wonders. Rhodes didn't just build the Colossus to impress, it built it to communicate. At the height of its power, this island wasn't just a dot on the Mediterranean map. It was the beating heart of ancient trade, a place where Egyptian grain, Phoenician dyes, and Greek olive oil changed hands under the watchful gaze of Helios. The Colossus, then, wasn't merely a religious monument. It was a billboard, a silent proclamation to every merchant sailing into the harbor. Here lies wealth, stability, and the favor of the gods. But could there have been more to this message than sheer spectacle? Consider the logistics of ancient trade. Rhodes controlled key shipping lanes, and its wealth came from tariffs as much as from goods. Historical records describe a complex system of harbor fees, with officials meticulously tracking cargo. Some scholars argue the Colossus's hollow interior might have doubled as a storage space for these records, clay tablets or papyrus scrolls detailing transactions, sealed away from humidity and theft. It's not as far-fetched as it sounds. Temples often served as economic archives, their sacred status deterring tampering. Imagine a chamber inside the statue's base, accessible only to trusted scribes, where the island's commercial heartbeat was literally set in stone. Then there's the matter of security. Rhodes was notorious for its piracy crackdowns, and its navy policed the waters ruthlessly. The Colossus, standing sentinel over the harbor, would have been the perfect place to hide a failsafe, a backup trove of maritime laws, treaties, or even confiscated cargo ledgers. A 6th century Byzantine text mentions sun-bronze strongboxes in Rhodes, rumored to hold unbreakable contracts. Could these have been relics from the Colossus's interior, salvaged after its fall? But the most tantalizing theory revolves not just what might have been stored inside, but who placed it there. Rhodes' trade alliances were delicate, brokered with gifts as much as with gold. Imagine ambassadors from Alexandria or Carthage presenting ceremonial offerings, precious metals, rare spices, even exotic animals, to be sealed within the Colossus as tokens of goodwill. These wouldn't just be treasures, they'd be political collateral, symbols of trust literally embedded in the city's guardian. When the statue fell, did those gifts vanish into the black market, or were they quietly retrieved, their diplomatic significance lost to time? The answer might lie in the statue's materials. Rhodian bronze wasn't just any alloy. Its high tin content made it resonate like a bell, a quality that could have been more than artistic. Some engineers suggest the metal's acoustic properties might have been harnessed during trade negotiations. Picture this: a delegate speaks into a hidden tube at the statue's base, their voice amplified through the hollow torso, booming across the harbor like divine approval for a deal. It's speculative, yes, but trade in antiquity was as much theater as transaction. What better way to awe a visiting merchant than with the voice of a god? Of course, skeptics counter that no direct evidence ties the Colossus to commerce, but that's the thing about symbols, they don't need inventories to hold meaning. Whether it stored scrolls, gifts, or nothing at all, the Colossus stood as the ultimate advertisement for Rhodes' prosperity. Every gleaming inch of it whispered to traders, here, wealth isn't just accumulated. It's monumentalized, and that, perhaps, was the real treasure hidden in plain sight. When the shattered remains of the Colossus lay sprawled across Rhodes, the island faced a crossroads: rebuild their fallen guardian or let it rest in ruins. According to ancient historians, the decision came down to a single cryptic message from the Oracle of Delphi: do not raise the fallen giant. At face value, this seems like typical prophetic vagueness. But what if there was more to this warning than blind superstition? Oracles in the ancient world weren't just fortune tellers. They were political advisors, cultural gatekeepers, and sometimes the only ones trusted with dangerous knowledge. Take the Oracle of Delphi's track record. Her pronouncements often carried layered meanings, advising cities to avoid war by interpreting omens or exposing hidden threats through riddles. One famous example comes from the Persian Wars, when she warned Athens to trust in wooden walls, a phrase initially baffling until Themistocles realized it referred to their navy. Could the Colossus warning have been similarly coded? Some scholars point to the statue's hollow structure, suggesting the oracle might have known about unstable materials or even hidden chambers that made reconstruction perilous. Imagine an interior weakened by corrosion, its iron skeleton rusted to fragility. Raising it could have risked collapse, endangering the city anew. Then there's the darker interpretation. Rhodian texts hint that the Colossus wasn't just a tribute to Helios, it was a binding force meant to anchor divine favor to the island. Certain rituals of the era involved sealing offerings, or even curses inside statues to invoke protection. If the Colossus contained such ritual objects, disturbing its remains might have been seen as breaking a pact with the gods. A 1st-century historian, Philo of Byzantium, wrote of bronze giants holding the breath of the divine, implying some statues acted as vessels for spiritual energy. Could the oracle have feared unleashing what was sealed inside? But perhaps the most practical explanation lies in the politics of the era. Rhodes had just survived a brutal siege and an earthquake. Its resources were stretched thin. Rebuilding the Colossus would have drained the treasury for what? A symbol, however grand, couldn't feed citizens or repair homes. The oracle's warning might have been a convenient excuse to prioritize survival over spectacle. Yet even this theory raises questions. Why didn't later generations, when Rhodes regained its wealth, attempt to resurrect their iconic guardian? The answer might lie in something more enduring than economics: memory. Centuries after the fall, travelers reported locals avoiding the ruins, speaking of strange sounds, metallic groans, whispers on the wind coming from the wreckage. Whether superstition or something stranger, the Colossus's legacy wasn't just in its metal, but in the stories that outlived it. And sometimes, the most powerful secrets aren't hidden in chambers or inscriptions. They're carried in the collective hesitation of those who refuse to disturb the past. The Colossus of Rhodes has taken on a life of its own in modern storytelling, often twisted into something far removed from its ancient origins. Hollywood loves to depict it as a towering automaton, its eyes glowing with supernatural fire, or as a mechanical guardian with gears grinding inside its bronze shell. Video games like Shadow of the Colossus or films such as Clash of the Titans amplify these myths, turning the statue into a creature of pure fantasy. But while these versions make for thrilling entertainment, they obscure the real marvel, the fact that this structure was built by human hands without magic or futuristic technology, in an era where every hammer stroke was a triumph of will over physics. Digging past the pop culture veneer reveals something even more fascinating: how these exaggerations accidentally preserve tiny kernels of truth. Take the idea of the Colossus moving. While it certainly didn't walk or swat at ships, ancient engineers did design statues with movable parts. The Greeks rigged colossal figures with rotating heads or pivoting arms for theatrical effect. Think of Tolos, the bronze giant of myth who is said to patrol Crete. Could the Colossus have had a similar, if simpler, mechanism? A torch that could be raised or lowered, perhaps, or a head engineered to tilt with the wind? The line between myth and reality blurs when you consider what was technically possible at the time. Then there's the persistent myth of the harbor-straddling pose. It's visually striking, so much so that even reputable documentaries sometimes repeat it. But this image says more about us than the ancient Rhodians. It reflects our own awe, our desire to amplify the past into something superhuman. The truth that the Colossus likely stood on a pedestal near the water doesn't diminish its grandeur. If anything, it makes the achievement more impressive. No divine intervention, no impossible engineering, just craftsmanship so advanced, it still fools us into thinking it was magic. But the most telling distortion lies in the Colossus's purpose. Modern retellings often cast it as a weapon or a mystical barrier, guarding Rhodes from invaders. In reality, it was a symbol of resilience built from the melted-down weapons of a defeated enemy. That's a subtler, richer story, one about turning war into art, destruction into legacy. The real Colossus didn't need to shoot lasers or come to life. Its power was in what it represented: a city's ability to rise, quite literally, from the scrap heaps of conflict. So why does this matter? Because every time we uncritically repeat the myth, we risk losing sight of the actual people behind the legend. The engineers who balanced equations in the dirt, the laborers who hoisted bronze plates under the Mediterranean sun. The Colossus wasn't a fantasy. It was a testament to what humans can build when they refuse to be small. And that, perhaps, is the most electrifying mystery of all. Not how the statue might have worked in a fictional universe, but how it did work in ours, with nothing but ingenuity, sweat, and a city's unbreakable pride. The bronze plates that formed the Colossus weren't just hammered into shape. They were a masterpiece of ancient metallurgy, each one a testament to a craft honed over generations. To grasp how the Rhodians achieved such precision on a colossal scale, we need to step into their foundries where fire, chemistry, and artistry converged. Unlike smaller statues cast as single pieces, the Colossus required hundreds of individual sections, each carefully shaped to interlock like a three-dimensional puzzle. But here's the breakthrough. Recent analysis of Rhodian bronze artifacts reveals their alloy wasn't just copper and tin. It contained trace amounts of lead, an additive that lowered the melting point and made the metal more fluid. This wasn't accidental. It allowed artisans to pour thinner, more uniform plates, perfect for creating the statue's skin without compromising strength. The real innovation, though, lay in their molding technique. While most ancient bronzes were cast using the lost wax method, where a wax model is melted away to leave a hollow form, the Colossus's size demanded something bolder. Archaeologists studying workshop remains near Rhodes' old harbor uncovered massive clay molds lined with charcoal residue. These weren't for small ornaments. They were designed for plates as tall as a person. The Rhodians likely used a hybrid approach, carving the initial shapes in wood, coating them in clay to create reusable molds, then pouring molten bronze directly into the gaps. This method would have allowed them to mass-produce consistent sections while leaving the interiors hollow, ideal for concealing chambers or cavities. But how did they ensure such precision across hundreds of plates? The answer might lie in the markings found on fragments of Rhodian bronze unearthed in Alexandria. Tiny chiseled symbol circles, arrows, even miniature suns appear along the edges of some pieces. At first dismissed as workshop tallies, researchers now think these were assembly guides, a kind of ancient IKEA manual ensuring each plate fit its neighbor perfectly. If so, this system could have extended to hidden features. Imagine a symbol denoting where two plates formed a secret seam, or where an interior compartment's access point might be concealed beneath decorative rivets. The most tantalizing clue comes from an unexpected source: shipwrecks. Divers exploring a sunken Rhodian merchant vessel off Cyprus found a cache of bronze sheets stamped with quality control marks. Among them was a curved fragment bearing not just symbols but a line of text: Helios seas. Was this a discarded test piece from the Colossus's construction? The curvature matches estimates of the statue's torso, and the inscription echoes dedicatory phrases used in Rhodian temples. If this fragment is genuine, it suggests the interior surfaces might have carried hidden messages, prayers, builders' names, or even instructions meant only for the gods. Of course, skeptics argue that hollow spaces were purely practical, a way to reduce weight and material costs. But consider this: the same Rhodians built intricate bronze automatons, mechanical birds that sang when water flowed through them, miniature gods that poured libations. If they could engineer such delicate mechanisms, why not design the Colossus with hidden layers? Perhaps the greatest secret of the bronze work isn't how they made the statue look imposing from the outside, but what they might have left unseen within. Every hammer stroke, every carefully poured plate could have been a veil hiding chambers, artifacts, or even acoustic tricks meant to make the statue speak when the wind rushed through its hollow core. The tragedy is that we may never know for certain. Without the original plates, we're left with fragments and echoes. Yet the very fact that these questions persist, that we're still piecing together the metallurgical genius of artisans who worked over 2 millennia ago, proves the Colossus's true legacy. It wasn't just a statue, it was a riddle cast in bronze, daring us to look beyond its surface. The idea that the Colossus of Rhodes might have functioned as a giant astronomical marker isn't as far-fetched as it first sounds. Picture this: a towering bronze figure positioned with such precision that its shadow, or perhaps the gleam of its torch, would align with specific points on the ground during key celestial events. The ancient Greeks were masterful astronomers, tracking the heavens with remarkable accuracy. Temples across the Mediterranean were often aligned with solstices or equinoxes, their architecture serving as monumental calendars. Why wouldn't Rhodes, a hub of trade and knowledge, embed similar wisdom into its most iconic creation? Take the statue's rumored torch, for instance. If it held a flame, the angle of its light during sunrise or sunset could have marked the changing seasons. During the summer solstice, the longest day of the year, the torch's glow might have illuminated a specific marker on the harbor's edge, signaling to sailors and citizens alike that the season for safe passage had begun. Conversely, the winter solstice could have seen the statue's shadow stretch across a designated point, a silent herald of colder months ahead. This wouldn't have required advanced technology, just careful observation and a deep understanding of the sun's annual journey. Then there's the question of alignment. While the Colossus likely didn't straddle the harbor, its placement near the water's edge would have been deliberate. Recent studies of Rhodes topography suggest the statue's pedestal was oriented along an axis that matches the sun's path during the equinoxes. On those 2 days each year when day and night are of equal length, sunlight would have struck the statue's face or reflective surfaces at a perfect right angle, creating a dazzling effect visible across the harbor. Imagine the impact, a burst of light seemingly conjured by the gods, announcing the balance of the seasons, but the celestial connections might run even deeper. Some researchers point to the statue's materials as clues. Bronze, with its golden sheen, was sacred to Helios, the sun god. The alloy's reflective properties could have been harnessed to catch and redirect sunlight during specific times of day or year, turning the Colossus into a kind of solar telegraph. A polished bronze plate positioned just so might have flashed signals to distant watchtowers or ships, a silent language of light understood only by those trained to read it. The most intriguing theory, though, involves the statue's interior. If the hollow chambers we've speculated about existed, they might have been designed to channel sunlight in precise ways. Small apertures in the bronze plating could have allowed beams of light to penetrate the statue's core during solstices or equinoxes, illuminating hidden symbols or inscriptions only visible on those sacred days. This wouldn't be without precedent. Egyptian temples like Abu Simbel were engineered so that sunlight would illuminate inner sanctums on specific dates, a fusion of architecture and astronomy meant to awe and inspire. Of course, skeptics argue that without definitive proof, these theories remain speculative. But consider this: Rhodes was home to some of the ancient world's greatest minds, including astronomers who mapped the stars and engineers who defied gravity. Is it really so hard to believe they'd weave their knowledge into the fabric of their greatest monument? The Colossus wasn't just a statue. It was a canvas, a testament to human ingenuity and our eternal fascination with the heavens. And if even a fraction of these celestial connections hold truth, then the Colossus didn't just stand guard over Rhodes. It spoke the silent language of the cosmos, a message cast in bronze and sunlight, waiting for us to decipher. The Colossus of Rhodes wasn't just a marvel of art or an offering to the gods. It was a calculated power move. Picture this: a city-state fresh from repelling an invasion by one of the ancient world's most feared warlords, Demetrius the Besieger, choosing not to rebuild its walls but to melt down the enemy's abandoned weapons into something unprecedented. This wasn't just recycling, it was psychological warfare cast in bronze. Every gleaming plate of the Colossus sent a message to rival states and trading partners alike. Rhodes didn't just survive attacks, it turned them into monuments. Consider the timing. The statue rose in the early 3rd century before the Common Era, a period when Mediterranean powers jockeyed for dominance. Rhodes, though small, controlled vital sea routes. By erecting a Colossus visible miles out to sea, the city wasn't just honoring Helios, it was asserting its place in the geopolitical pecking order. The statue's scale alone would have dwarfed tributes in rival ports, a silent boast of Rhodian wealth and technical prowess. But the real masterstroke lay in its materials. Those melted-down siege engines, they'd belonged to Demetrius, a ruler who'd famously styled himself as the besieger of cities. Transforming his war machines into a god's likeness wasn't just symbolic. It was a brutal mic drop in an era when propaganda was carved in stone and metal. Delving deeper, the statue's design might have held coded political messages. Ancient sources describe the Colossus wearing a radiate crown, a spiked halo typically reserved for depictions of deified rulers. In Rhodes, where the ruling class carefully balanced democracy with oligarchy, this could have been a subtle nod to the city's unique identity, a republic that saw itself as divinely favored. Even the statue's rumored stance, one hand shielding its eyes as if gazing seaward, might have carried dual meaning. While it echoed Helios's role as sun god, it also mirrored the vigilance of Rhodian naval patrols, whose ships policed piracy and protected the trade networks fueling the island's wealth. Political subtext grows sharper when we examine what wasn't recorded. No inscriptions boasting of the Colossus's construction survive, unusual for a project of this scale. Was this modesty or something more deliberate? Some historians suggest the lack of dedicatory plaques points to an intentional ambiguity, a way for Rhodes to let the statue's sheer presence speak volumes without overtly provoking rivals like the Ptolemies or Seleucids. After all, why risk alienating potential allies with bragging when a silent, sun-crowned giant could do the talking? Perhaps the most telling clue lies in the statue's destruction. When the earthquake felled the Colossus, Rhodes chose not to rebuild despite having the resources. The official reason cited an oracle's warning, but politics likely played a role. By then, the Mediterranean's balance of power had shifted. Rome's star was rising, and overt displays of Rhodian grandeur might have seemed imprudent. The fallen Colossus, left in ruins, became a different kind of statement, a reminder that even the mightiest symbols adapt to survive changing tides. In the end, the Colossus's true power wasn't just in its height or its gleaming surface. It was in how Rhodes wielded it, not as a static monument, but as a living chess piece in the ancient world's great game of influence and perception. Every beam of sunlight it caught, every gasp it drew from visiting merchants, reinforced a simple truth: this wasn't just a statue. It was the ultimate flex. The idea that the Colossus of Rhodes doubled as a military asset isn't just modern speculation, it's rooted in the island's desperate history. Picture Rhodes in the 3rd century before the Common Era, a maritime powerhouse constantly under threat from rival fleets and pirates. Its wealth depended on controlling trade routes, and its survival hinged on spotting enemies before they reached shore. So when the Rhodians built a towering bronze sentinel overlooking the harbor, was it purely for show, or did it serve as the ancient equivalent of a coastal defense system? Start with the statue's height. At over 100 feet tall, the Colossus would have offered an unrivaled vantage point. Ancient sources describe hollow statues with interior staircases. What if guards could climb to platforms hidden within the statue's crown or shoulders, scanning the horizon for approaching ships? Unlike wooden watchtowers which burned easily, a bronze giant would have been nearly impervious to fire or siege engines. Even more intriguing, the statue's rumored torch could have functioned as a beacon, not just for navigation, but as a warning signal. Imagine a system where different flame patterns or smoke colors relayed coded messages to patrol ships, 1 plume for merchant vessels, 3 for hostile sails. Then there's the matter of acoustics. Rhodes was renowned for its advanced harbor defenses, including chain booms that could block enemy ships. But chains require coordination. Someone needs to give the order to raise them. The Colossus's hollow interior, with its potential to amplify sound, might have housed a signaling device. Conch shells, bronze horns, or even a suspended metal plate struck like a gong could have sent alerts echoing across the water, far louder than a human voice. Recent excavations near the ancient harbor uncovered a series of resonant bronze fragments, their edges worn smooth. Could these have been part of a long-forgotten auditory alarm system? But the most provocative theory involves the statue's construction materials. The bronze plates covering the Colossus weren't just decorative, they were functional armor. Analysis of Rhodian metallurgy reveals their bronze alloy was unusually thick, nearly ½ an inch in some sections. That's overkill for a static monument, but perfect for deflecting projectiles. If attackers tried to shower the statue with flaming arrows or ballista bolts, the angled plates might have ricocheted them harmlessly into the sea. Even the statue's posture could have been strategic. A leaning stance, often dismissed as artistic license, might have actually made it a harder target for siege engines, its mass distributed to absorb impacts. Skeptics argue there's no direct evidence the Colossus played a military role. Yet consider this, Rhodes didn't just build the statue after victory, they built it from the spoils of war. Every inch of that bronze came from melted down siege weapons, a literal transformation of aggression into protection. Whether it housed lookouts, signaled warnings, or simply loomed as a psychological deterrent, the Colossus was never just a tribute. It was a statement carved in metal. Approach with caution, because this city turns even its enemies' tools into guardians. Among the 7 wonders of the ancient world, the Colossus of Rhodes stood apart, not just in height but in purpose. While the Great Pyramid of Giza was a tomb, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon an oasis, and the statue of Zeus at Olympia a religious centerpiece, the Colossus was something different entirely. It wasn't built to house the dead, showcase luxury, or even dominate a sacred space. It was a monument born from defiance, forged from the weapons of a defeated enemy, and designed to be seen not just by pilgrims or elites, but by every sailor, merchant, and traveler entering its harbor. That accessibility was revolutionary. Unlike the other wonders, which were often tucked away in temples or royal complexes, the Colossus was a public spectacle, a daily reminder of Rhodes' resilience to its own citizens and a warning to outsiders. What truly set it apart, though, was its construction. The Great Pyramid relied on millions of limestone blocks, the Lighthouse of Alexandria on meticulous masonry, but the Colossus was a feat of metallurgy. While other wonders were carved or stacked, this one was hammered, poured, and engineered, an early example of large-scale metalworking that pushed the boundaries of what bronze could do. Its hollow design wasn't just practical, it was a radical departure from the solid stone of its counterparts. That emptiness inside, often dismissed as a structural necessity, might have been its most intriguing feature. The pyramid's chambers held sarcophagi, the mausoleum at Halicarnassus housed urns, but the Colossus's voids, they could have hidden anything or nothing at all, leaving space for the imagination to flourish. Then there's the matter of scale versus symbolism. The Temple of Artemis at Ephesus awed with its sheer opulence, its columns studded with jewels, but the Colossus derived power from its raw material. Bronze, especially the alloy Rhodes perfected, carried a deeper meaning. This wasn't just metal, it was transformed weaponry, a literal reshaping of war into art. Every inch of its surface whispered a story of victory, a narrative the other wonders couldn't match. Even its posture, whether it stood legs apart or not, was a conversation starter. The pharaoh's lighthouse guided ships, but the Colossus seemed to engage with them, its torch or outstretched arm a dynamic element absent from the static grandeur of the statue of Zeus. The most compelling difference, though, lies in its afterlife. The other wonders faded gradually, eroded by time or dismantled piece by piece. The Colossus fell suddenly, dramatically, leaving its ruins to be pondered for centuries. Where the pyramid still stands and the gardens vanished without a trace, the Colossus lingered in the in-between, its fragments debated, its location contested, its very existence a puzzle inviting speculation. That ambiguity might be the key to its secrets. The pyramid's purpose is clear, the lighthouse's function documented, but the Colossus, its mysteries weren't just lost. They were built into its design, waiting for someone to ask the right questions. So what does this tell us about its hidden potential? The Colossus's uniqueness wasn't an accident. Its hollow core, its public placement, its militaristic origins, every unusual choice points to layers of meaning we're still unraveling. While the other wonders were statements of power or piety, the Colossus was a cipher, a blend of engineering and enigma. And that perhaps is why it captivates us most. It wasn't just a marvel, it was a riddle cast in bronze, daring us to look beyond the surface and see what the ancients might have concealed in plain sight. Ground-penetrating radar surveys near Rhodes' ancient harbor have already teased archaeologists with tantalizing anomalies, unexplained voids, and metallic signatures buried beneath layers of sediment. These ghostly shapes could be anything from collapsed chambers to scattered fragments of the Colossus's internal framework, but the real breakthrough may come from newer technologies. Imagine muon tomography, a technique that uses cosmic rays to map dense materials underground, revealing the outlines of buried structures without lifting a shovel. Or consider hyperspectral imaging, which can detect chemical traces of ancient bronze in soil samples, potentially tracing the statue's dismantled pieces across the Mediterranean. One promising lead comes from a 2019 survey that identified a semicircular foundation matching descriptions of the Colossus's pedestal. Beneath it, sensors picked up strange metallic distortions, not random scrap, but concentrated deposits arranged in patterns that suggest deliberate placement. Could these be the remnants of votive offerings sealed beneath the statue, or even structural reinforcements designed to stabilize its massive weight? The composition is particularly intriguing. Preliminary scans show traces of lead mixed with bronze, an alloy consistent with Rhodian metallurgy, but rarely found in such quantities outside workshop sites. Then there's the underwater angle. If the Colossus stood near the harbor, centuries of erosion and seismic shifts may have sent fragments tumbling into the sea. In 2022, marine archaeologists mapping Rhodes' coastline discovered several bronze lumps fused to the seabed by mineral deposits. While too corroded to identify conclusively, their size and shape align with sections of curved plating, perhaps pieces of the statue's torso or limbs. Even more compelling are the peculiar markings found on one fragment, a series of drilled holes in a spiral pattern. To some researchers, these resemble attachment points for interior scaffolding, but others propose they could have anchored acoustic devices, turning the hollow statue into a giant resonator during ceremonies. The most electrifying possibility, though, lies in what hasn't been searched yet. Ancient texts mention a network of tunnels beneath Rhodes, some leading from the city center to the harbor. Were these merely drainage systems, or could they have connected to the Colossus's foundation? A 2023 LiDAR scan of a collapsed tunnel near Mandrake Harbor revealed walls lined with unusual niches, spaces too shallow for storage, but perfect for concealing small objects. If the Rhodians hid artifacts related to the statue's construction or ritual purpose, these forgotten passageways might be the key. Of course, not every blip on a radar screen leads to treasure. Modern archaeology is as much about patience as discovery, and Rhodes' strict preservation laws mean any excavation must be meticulously planned, but that's the thrill of the hunt. Every scan, every soil sample brings us closer to separating legend from reality. Whether we uncover hidden chambers, lost inscriptions, or simply the quiet truth of an engineering marvel, the Colossus continues to challenge us. Its secrets aren't just buried in the earth, they're woven into the very way we interrogate the past, proving that some wonders never stop speaking. The idea that the Colossus of Rhodes might be connected to civilizations far older than ancient Greece, or even to long-lost technological knowledge, sounds like something ripped from the pages of a pulp adventure novel. But dig deeper and you'll find these fringe theories aren't just wild speculation. They're tangled in one of history's greatest unsolved riddles, the Bronze Age collapse. Around 1200 years before the Common Era, the Mediterranean's most advanced societies, the Mycenaeans, Hittites, and even Egypt's new kingdom crumbled in a matter of decades. Cities burned, trade routes vanished, and entire writing systems were forgotten. Could fragments of their knowledge have survived, hidden away, only to resurface centuries later in projects like the Colossus? Take the statue's metallurgy. Rhodian bronze wasn't just any alloy, it had an unusually high tin content, making it resonate like a bell and resist corrosion better than ordinary bronze. This exact formula mirrors alloys found in shipwrecks from the late Bronze Age, a time when metalworkers from the enigmatic sea peoples were rumored to possess advanced techniques. Even stranger, the Colossus's hollow core construction echoes descriptions of colossal statues from Hittite texts, which speak of giants with voices of thunder built around iron frameworks. The Hittites were masters of iron smelting centuries before it became widespread, and their empire dissolved just before the collapse. Could Rhodian engineers have stumbled upon forgotten blueprints or techniques preserved in some dusty archive? Then there's the matter of timing. The Colossus rose in the early 3rd century before the Common Era, but Rhodes itself had been a cultural crossroads for millennia. The island's earliest settlers traded with Minoans and Mycenaean societies that thrived before the collapse. Local legends speak of a sun vault beneath the city where ancient artifacts were stored. While no such vault has been found, archaeologists have uncovered Mycenaean-era tombs under Rhodes' medieval streets, their walls etched with symbols resembling later Rhodian inscriptions. Coincidence or evidence of a cultural thread stretching back to the Bronze Age? The most controversial theory involves the statue's rumored inner light. Medieval Arab travelers wrote of the fallen Colossus's fragments glowing faintly at dawn, a phenomenon they attributed to sun metal. Modern material scientists have a different take. Certain bronze alloys, when exposed to seawater, can develop a patina that fluoresces under specific conditions. But here's the kicker. Similar descriptions appear in Egyptian texts from the time of the collapse, referencing shining sentinels along the coasts. Could the Colossus's builders have rediscovered a forgotten luminescent alloy, or even a primitive form of electroplating lost in the collapse's chaos? Skeptics, of course, dismiss these connections as circumstantial. The Bronze Age collapse was a catastrophe, they argue, not a library fire. Knowledge was lost gradually, not erased overnight. Yet consider this, Rhodes' own founding myths tell of Helios raising the island from the sea after the gods abandoned humanity. It's a poetic allegory, but what if it's also a garbled memory? A story of survival, of a people clawing back wisdom from the wreckage of a darker age. Whether the Colossus held echoes of that lost world or not, its very existence proves one thing: humanity's drive to rebuild is as old as civilization itself. And sometimes the greatest mysteries aren't about what was hidden, but what was remembered. Rhodes didn't just face the sea, it mastered it. The island's wealth flowed from its harbors, where ships from Egypt, Phoenicia, and beyond crowded the docks, unloading spices, silks, and secrets. The Colossus didn't rise in isolation. It was the crowning piece of a maritime empire, and its placement near the water was no accident. But what if its connection to the sea ran deeper than just symbolism? Recent underwater surveys suggest the statue might have been part of an intricate harbor network, one designed not just for trade, but for control. Divers exploring the ancient breakwaters have uncovered anomalies, submerged platforms, precisely cut channels, and even what appear to be bronze fittings embedded in the seabed. These aren't random shipwrecks or natural formations. Their arrangement hints at a system, one that could have interacted with the Colossus in ways we're only beginning to grasp. Imagine a series of reflective bronze plates mounted on the statue's lower half, angled to catch sunlight and project beams across the water's surface. Combined with submerged mirrors or polished stones, these could have created a navigational grid, guiding ships safely into port while marking hazardous shallows. The concept isn't as far-fetched as it sounds. The pharaoh's lighthouse at Alexandria used mirrors to amplify its beacon. Why wouldn't Rhodes employ similar ingenuity? Then there's the matter of defense. Rhodes was notorious for its pirate hunting fleet, and the harbor's layout suggests it was engineered for more than just commerce. The same breakwaters that sheltered trading vessels could have funneled enemy ships into kill zones, where archers on the Colossus's pedestal, or even hidden ballistae mounted within its hollow legs, might have picked them off. Historians have long puzzled over why Demetrius the besieger's navy struggled to breach Rhodes' defenses. Could the Colossus have been more than a symbol? Could it have been the linchpin of a coastal fortress, its towering form masking a ruthless practicality? The most tantalizing clues, though, come from the water itself. In 2018, marine archaeologists mapping Mandrake Harbor discovered a series of circular depressions in the seabed, each lined with lead. These match descriptions of ancient wave energy devices mentioned in Hellenistic texts, floating mechanisms that harnessed tidal motion to power mills or pumps. If the Colossus stood nearby, its hollow interior could have housed a primitive hydraulic system, using seawater channeled through these basins to create pressure for fountains or even audible signals. Picture the statue not just as a silent sentinel, but as a living part of the harbor's mechanics, its bronze skin resonating with the pulse of the tides. Of course, skeptics argue that without direct evidence linking these features to the Colossus, the theories remain speculative. But consider this: Rhodes didn't build the statue as a standalone monument. It was the centerpiece of a waterfront designed to awe, intimidate, and innovate. Every element, from the angle of its gaze to the materials in its construction, served a purpose. Whether its secrets lie in submerged ruins or long eroded mechanisms, one thing is clear: the Colossus wasn't just watching the sea, it was speaking its language. And if we listen closely, the waves might still carry echoes of what it said. To understand what might have been hidden within the Colossus, we need to step into the sacred world of Helios worship, where statues weren't just tributes, but vessels for the divine. The Rhodians didn't merely build a monument to their patron god. They crafted a ritual space where the boundary between human and celestial blurred. Ancient sources describe ceremonies where priests would anoint statues with oils, dress them in sacred garments, and even feed them offerings, believing the deity's essence could inhabit the metal. If the Colossus followed this tradition, its hollow interior wouldn't have been empty. It would have pulsed with spiritual energy, a hidden sanctum where only the initiated dared to tread. Consider the rituals performed at the Temple of Helios in Rhodes, just a stone's throw from where the Colossus stood. Inscriptions detail a ceremony called the Awakening of Helios, where priests lit fires at dawn to mimic the sun's ascent, their chants echoing through bronze resonators to create an otherworldly hum. Could the Colossus have amplified these rites? Its torso, lined with curved bronze plates, might have functioned like a giant tuning fork, transforming vibrations into thunderous echoes that rolled across the harbor. Some scholars point to the statue's rumored torch as more than a symbolic gesture. It could have held actual flames during solstice ceremonies, turning the Colossus into a beacon of both physical and spiritual illumination. Then there's the matter of offerings. Excavations at other Helios shrines reveal niches packed with votive gifts, miniature sun discs, bronze figurines, even sealed clay jars containing aromatic resins. These weren't left haphazardly. They were carefully placed in alignment with astronomical events. A recently deciphered Rhodian scroll describes a ritual where objects were consecrated within the god's likeness during the summer solstice. If the Colossus had interior chambers, they might have housed such treasures positioned to catch the first rays of dawn on sacred days, activating their spiritual potency. The statue's hollow legs could have served as conduits, channeling libations poured into hidden apertures down to subterranean crypts, linking the heavens, the statue, and the underworld in a single ritual circuit. The most provocative clue comes from an unexpected source, a 2nd century astrologer's diary found in Alexandria. It mentions a Rhodian tradition of sun tablets, thin bronze sheets inscribed with prayers and slid into the cavities of sacred statues. When heated by sunlight, the metal would expand, causing the plates to vibrate faintly against the statue's interior, a phenomenon worshippers interpreted as the god's whispered reply. If the Colossus contained such devices, its very skin might have thrummed with coded messages during rituals, audible only to those pressing their ears against its surface. But here's the twist: not all hidden things were meant to stay hidden. Some Hellenistic mystery cults practiced ritual revelation, where sacred objects were periodically displayed to initiates before being resealed. The Colossus's design, with its accessible interior and removable plates, would have allowed priests to stage such revelations dramatically. Imagine a solstice ceremony where a hidden compartment in the statue's chest swung open, unveiling a radiant sun disk to gasps of awe. This wasn't just theater, it was theology in motion, a way to make the invisible divine tangibly present. The Colossus's destruction didn't end these practices, it transformed them. Centuries after the statue fell, Roman travelers reported Rhodians still gathering at its ruins during equinoxes, leaving offerings in the cracks of broken bronze. The god's presence, it seems, outlasted even his colossal vessel, and that lingering devotion hints at the statue's true secret. The greatest thing concealed within it wasn't gold or mechanisms, but the collective faith of a people who saw their destiny reflected in its gleaming form. Every ritual, every offering, every whispered prayer turned the Colossus into something far more than metal. It became a mirror, reflecting Rhodes' deepest hopes back at the heavens themselves. The age of colossal statues didn't fade quietly. It collapsed under the weight of shifting empires, economies, and the brutal arithmetic of survival. After the Colossus of Rhodes, few civilizations attempted such audacious projects. The reasons weren't just about resources or engineering. They reflected deeper changes in how power was expressed and where societies invested their awe. Consider the Roman Empire, which conquered Greece and absorbed its artistry but rarely replicated its monumental scale in freestanding statues. Instead, Rome favored triumphal arches and sprawling bas-reliefs, narrative art that celebrated conquests in detail rather than singular, towering forms. The Colossus's decline wasn't an accident. It was a symptom of a world moving from divine symbolism to pragmatic propaganda, one of the most overlooked factors. The sheer cost of maintenance. The Colossus stood for just 56 years before its fall, but even that short lifespan required constant upkeep. Bronze, for all its grandeur, was a demanding material. Salt air corroded its surface, storms stressed its joints, and the hollow interior likely hosted nests of birds or rodents that weakened its framework. Ancient accounts mention a specialized priesthood tasked with tending the statue, cleaning its surfaces, reinforcing its supports, and perhaps even climbing inside to inspect for damage. When Rhodes was rocked by earthquakes and financial crises in the centuries after the Colossus's collapse, the idea of rebuilding such a high-maintenance symbol must have seemed less like an honor and more like a burden. Then there's the military revolution that reshaped the ancient world. The Colossus rose during the heyday of city-states, where a single grand monument could embody a nation's identity. But as empires expanded, defense priorities shifted. Why spend decades worth of bronze, a critical resource for weapons and armor, on a statue when rival kingdoms were fielding armies of unprecedented size? The metal from the Colossus's ruins wasn't just sold off. It was likely melted down for coins, ship fittings, or spearheads. The same pragmatic thinking that birthed the statue repurposing Demetrius's siege engines also doomed its successors. In an age of total war, art had to be expendable. Yet the most compelling explanation lies in spirituality's evolution. The Colossus wasn't just big, it was alive with religious significance, a vessel for Helios's presence. As monotheism spread across the Mediterranean, the theological role of such statues became fraught. Christianity and later Islam discouraged representations of the divine on a human scale, let alone a superhuman one. The few colossal statues that did emerge, like the short-lived Colossus of Barletta in Byzantium, were often repurposed fragments of older works, stripped of their original meaning. The knowledge of how to build them, once passed down through guilds of sculptors and engineers, faded into obscurity. By the Middle Ages, the Colossus survived only as a distorted legend, its engineering feats so incomprehensible that storytellers assumed it must have straddled the harbor, because how else could something so massive stand? But here's the twist: the disappearance of colossal statuary might be precisely why the Colossus's secrets feel so tantalizing today. In a world that stopped building such wonders, the techniques used to create them weren't just forgotten, they were never documented in the first place. Rhodian engineers likely relied on oral traditions and hands-on apprenticeships, not blueprints. When those chains of knowledge snapped, the Colossus became a locked door with no key. Modern attempts to reconstruct its design, like the 2008 German architect's proposal for a modern Colossus using steel frames, only highlight how alien its construction feels now. We can approximate its shape, but not the worldview that made it possible. That cultural rupture explains why every new discovery, a radar anomaly, a sunken bronze fragment, feels like deciphering a message from another planet. The Colossus wasn't just a statue, it was the product of a civilization that saw no boundary between art, engineering, and the divine. Its secrets aren't hidden in the sand so much as they're stranded in time, waiting for us to relearn the language they were written in. And that may be the most humbling truth of all. Some mysteries endure not because evidence is lacking, but because we've lost the tools to understand what's right in front of us. Imagine peering through layers of earth and time without lifting a single shovel. Today's archaeologists are no longer limited to brushes and trowels. They're armed with tools that would seem like science fiction to the Rhodians who built the Colossus. Ground-penetrating radar, once bulky and imprecise, now operates at resolutions fine enough to detect the ghostly outline of a bronze rivet buried for millennia. Muon tomography, a technique borrowed from particle physics, allows researchers to map density variations deep underground using cosmic rays, revealing hidden chambers or collapsed tunnels invisible to conventional surveys. And then there's hyperspectral imaging, which can analyze soil chemistry from the air, pinpointing traces of ancient bronze corrosion, or even the faintest residues of ritual oils that might have seeped into the statue's foundation. These aren't just incremental upgrades, they're revolutionaries quietly dismantling the barriers between us and the past. But the real game changer lies in artificial intelligence. Machine learning algorithms now sift through mountains of fragmented data, scraps of ancient texts, satellite imagery, decades of excavation reports connecting dots human eyes might miss. A team at Oxford recently trained an AI to cross-reference Rhodian trade records with metallurgical analyses, uncovering previously overlooked shipping routes that could trace where the Colossus's bronze was sourced. Another project uses neural networks to reconstruct earthquake damage patterns, simulating how the statue might have fractured when it fell. These digital tools don't replace archaeologists, they amplify their intuition, turning whispers from the ancient world into audible conversations. The ocean, too, is yielding its secrets. Autonomous underwater drones equipped with sonar and magnetometers are mapping Rhodes' harbor floor with centimeter precision, identifying metallic anomalies that could be anything from discarded anchors to fragments of the Colossus's plating. In 2021, a robotic dive team off Cyprus discovered a bronze ingot stamped with a sun symbol identical to those on Rhodian coins using just such technology. If similar fragments lie near Rhodes' coast, advanced corrosion analysis could reveal whether they spent centuries exposed to seawater or were protected within the statue's interior, offering clues to hidden compartments. Perhaps most tantalizing are the advances in material science. Portable X-ray fluorescence devices let researchers analyze metal compositions on-site, distinguishing Rhodian bronze from later imitations by their unique tin-to-lead ratios. Synchrotron radiation, a supercharged X-ray technique, can peer inside corroded artifacts without damaging them, potentially revealing inscriptions or tool marks hidden beneath patina. There's even talk of applying quantum sensing technology so sensitive it can detect minute magnetic fields to search for iron framework remnants beneath the harbor's sediment where conventional metal detectors fail. Yet for all this innovation, the greatest breakthroughs may come from blending old and new. In 2023, a Greek architect revisiting 15th century Ottoman tax records noticed an obscure entry listing sun metal stored in a Rhodes warehouse. Cross-referencing the location with modern LiDAR scans revealed subterranean voids beneath the site chambers that could hold anything from construction records to salvaged fragments. It's a reminder that sometimes the key to unlocking the future of archaeology lies in dusting off the overlooked pages of history. The Colossus has waited 2,000 years to give up its secrets. With these tools, we're no longer just hoping to stumble upon answers. We're learning how to listen to the echoes it left behind. The Colossus of Rhodes wasn't just a marvel of metal. It was a mirror, reflecting humanity's endless drive to reach beyond what seems possible. For 56 years, it stood as a testament to resilience, forged from the weapons of a defeated enemy and towering over a city that refused to be broken. Yet its true legacy isn't in the years it spent watching over Rhodes, but in the centuries of mystery it left behind. From the moment it crumbled into the Mediterranean sun, the Colossus became more than a ruined statue. It transformed into a question, one that historians, engineers, and dreamers are still trying to answer. What secrets did this bronze giant truly hold? Think about the layers we've uncovered: the hollow chambers that might have housed sacred offerings, the iron skeleton that pushed ancient engineering to its limits, the whispers of celestial alignments hidden in its design. Each theory opens new doors, and behind every door lies another puzzle. Was it a lighthouse, its torch cutting through the night to guide ships safely home? A military sentinel, its hollow core echoing with warnings for approaching enemies? Or perhaps a sacred resonator, its bronze skin humming with the chants of priests during solstice ceremonies? The beauty of the Colossus is that it could have been all these things and more. What makes this statue so endlessly fascinating isn't just the gaps in our knowledge. It's the way those gaps invite us to reimagine the past. Every generation looks at the Colossus and sees something different, because every generation brings its own questions to the table. For Renaissance artists, it was a symbol of lost grandeur, inspiring towering sketches of a harbor-spanning titan. For Victorian archaeologists, it was a technical riddle, a challenge to reverse engineer forgotten craftsmanship. Today, with ground-penetrating radar and AI-assisted reconstructions, we're peeling back layers even the Rhodians might have forgotten. But here's the thing, the Colossus doesn't need definitive answers to matter. Its power lies in the conversation it sparks across millennia. Whether its chambers held gold, scrolls, or nothing but air, the statue's real treasure is the way it connects us to the people who built it. Every time we debate its purpose, we're walking in their footsteps, marveling at their ambition, grappling with their ingenuity, and maybe, just maybe, catching a glimpse of the world through their eyes. So what do you think? Was the Colossus a vault, a beacon, or something stranger still? Drop your wildest theories in the comments, because history's greatest wonders aren't just about solving mysteries. They're about keeping the conversation alive, and if you're hungry for more deep dives into the past, hit that subscribe button. The Colossus may have fallen, but the search for its secrets is just getting